Hey, welcome to another week of Daily Devos with Nancy Joe. I'm excited to do them outside today, so we'll see how this goes. So last week for me was the best. Was just so good, and I enjoyed every single day. Which I not that I don't enjoy them every day, but there was just so much last week, so much. Now, we talked about the Lord going on before us. We talked about, and let's just get into it, right? Let's go to Psalm 23. I think my Bible would just fall open to it as long as we've been in it. But we talked about He restores my soul, refreshes and restores my life and myself. He leads me in paths of righteousness, uprightness, and right standing with Him for His name's sake. And that's what we're going to get into today. And I do love, of course, the Amplified Classic Version. So King James, which is what we all know, what we all have memorized, is that He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. And one thing, of course, we looked at is that He goes on before us, that He leads, He guides, shows us the way. And Merriam-Webster's dictionary said to guide on a way, especially by going on in advance. And I love that about our Good Shepherd, that we are not going anywhere that He has not already been and already made provision available. And you think about that in terms of a shepherd with his flock. He is not going to take them to a place to pasture, to receive provision and nourishment, to be refreshed and restored, to a place that He is not sure that is going to be to their benefit and for their good. And so I love that He goes on before us to be sure that there is provision available, that it is a safe place and that it is a good place and that it's going to be for our benefit and not for our harm. That is good. There are so many things in this one that I want to. Sorry, there are a couple of cars coming through, which is a risk of being outside. But it's so beautiful. I'm going to take a few moments, so bear with me in the traffic. But there are a couple of other things that I'm going to look at this week that I want us to dig into together this week in the Good Shepherd leading us. Now, what kind of path is it that He's leading us down? It says that He leads me in paths of righteousness. Righteousness. And I know that we keep going back to this verse every time I talk about righteousness, but it's because it gives great definition to righteousness and paths of righteousness. What does that mean? So let's go to Matthew chapter 6 and verse 33. This is one you know by heart as well. And it says, seek at, aim at, and strive after, first of all, His kingdom and His righteousness. This is His way of doing and being right. That is righteousness. It's God's way of doing things. And that, of course, makes perfect sense when we read it in context. So go back to Psalm 23. And it says that He leads me in the paths of righteousness. He leads me in the path of doing right, of being right, of His way of doing and being right. And then the Amplified Version in Psalm 23 says, He leads me in the paths of righteousness, uprightness, and in right standing with Him. Again, His way of doing things, His right way. And if we go back to that Matthew passage, when we seek first His kingdom, when we do things His way, when we submit our flesh to His way and His will and His plan, then it is uprightness and right standing with Him. And when we choose not to be our own source, as a sheep, I would be such a foolish sheep. And even in this life, there are things that I don't do right and that I would not do right, and that if I didn't hear His voice, I would do wrong. But because He is my shepherd and I know His voice and I pray, Lord, tune my ears to hear You, then I have submitted myself, I have taken myself out of my own care and put myself into His care, and then He can be my source. I am no longer responsible for me. He is responsible for me. He is responsible for my safety, for my well-being, for my provision, for the provision, safety, and well-being of my family. Isn't that good news? That when we put ourselves in the hand of the Good Shepherd, that He's going to lead us down the paths of righteousness, His way of doing and being right. So we're going to pick up here again tomorrow. I have some exciting things to go through this week, and I will see you then. Bye, y'all.